Do you believe that a simple gesture can recur years later and change everything in someone's life? This is one of those questions that makes us stop and think, because we often go through life thinking that what we do in the heat of the moment is just a detail, something small that will soon be forgotten. But what if this detail became a turning point, capable of shaping not only someone else's destiny, but our own as well? Imagine, for example, an ordinary worker, someone who spends their days seeking a living a harsh and often silent routine. Now imagine this person faced with a situation where he must choose between what is safe and what is right, between self-interest and an act of selfless kindness. Have you ever found yourself in a similar situation? Have you ever wondered how you would have reacted? It's at these crossroads that we reveal who we truly are. The taxi driver in this story had no wealth, no reserves saved for life's unexpected events, but he had something that can't be bought, a heart willing to act with compassion. He lived like so many others we know, facing bills, fatigue, the uncertainty of each day, but maintaining the firm belief that despite the difficulties, it's worth being someone who lends a helping hand. This is the essence of true acts of kindness, those that arise unplanned, without expecting anything in return, but that ultimately resonate in ways no one could have predicted. Now think with me, how many times have you faced an opportunity to help someone and hesitated? How many times have you torn between the instinct to protect what little you had and the desire to transform, even if only for a moment, another person's life? This seemingly simple dilemma can carry a hidden truth that only time reveals, because gestures of compassion may seem small in the moment, but they carry within them the power to set off a journey that changes destinies. What you'll discover here is exactly that. How a gesture as simple as an unexpected ride on a night of despair was able to create a connection that spanned the years and returned in a surprising way. Stay with me until the end, because the impact of this story will show you something you may never have considered. The invisible power that exists when we choose to act driven by empathy. This isn't just another tale of generosity. It's a revelation about how our present decisions can become seeds for the future. And make no mistake, these seeds germinate even when we forget where we planted them. The taxi driver in our story never imagined he was about to experience a moment that would forever be etched in his memory. For him, that night was just another day at work, another ride among many, until the unexpected appeared before his eyes. A woman in despair, fighting against time, begging for help at a crucial moment. His heart didn't waver, but life, as so often happens, kept this scene silent, as if it were just another forgotten chapter. But time has a curious way of revealing behind-the-scenes details that were previously hidden. Have you ever been through this? Have you ever experienced something that seemed to be behind you, but then suddenly returned to your life in an unexpected way? It's this kind of revelation that transforms an ordinary story into a true lesson in humanity. And hearing what happened to this taxi driver, you might realize that even the most discreet gestures carry greater power than we imagine. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because this is where the story really begins to gain momentum, revealing not only the courage of a simple worker, but also the way life takes care of returning each act of kindness in ways we could never have anticipated. And as you let this story take you, you might realize it's not just about a taxi driver and a passenger in trouble, but about all of us. Because at some point in life, everyone has faced a situation where the choice seemed simple on the surface, but carried enormous weight in its consequences. And this is where I want to open a space for you to join this conversation. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment with what touched you most so far, or even an experience you've had where a kind gesture changed the course of something. It's incredible how the stories you share enrich this space even more and help others reflect as well. And if you're feeling the importance of this message, liking the video is a simple yet powerful way to show that this type of content deserves to continue reaching more people. It seems like a small detail, but every like helps YouTube understand that this message needs to be spread. And if what you're looking for are more stories like this, which make us think, feel, and believe that there's still compassion in the world, subscribing to the channel is the way to join me on this journey. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of content, creating a community where kindness and hope always find a place. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject because it is at this point that the lives of the taxi driver and that woman begin to intertwine in a way that no one could imagine, revealing how seemingly small decisions can hold behind the scenes transformations that only time can reveal. He wasn't a man of great wealth, nor someone who drew attention to himself with the clothes he wore or the car he drove. On the contrary, his taxi already showed the signs of a life of heavy use: worn seats, weather-beaten paint, an engine that required more care than he could give. But there was something in his posture, his gaze, and the way he spoke to people that made it clear that his greatest wealth lay in his heart. The taxi driver was known in the neighborhood for being someone who never failed to lend a hand when he saw a need, even when it meant arriving home with less money in his pocket. He believed that each ride was not only a means of survival, but also an opportunity to connect, to hear stories, to somehow transform someone's day. His neighbors saw him as an example of resilience. He worked long hours, braved chaotic traffic, cold early mornings, and mornings with almost no passengers. Yet he maintained the mindset that giving up was never an option. For him, difficulties were like silent trials that needed to be faced with patience and faith. And perhaps this way of approaching life was precisely what gave him the strength to resist the burden of everyday life. Unlike many who became skeptical in the face of daily struggles, he maintained a kind of sparkle in his eyes, as if he always believed that something good could emerge, even in the most unexpected moments. It wasn't naivete, but a conscious choice. He knew the pain, injustice, and hidden truths that life imposed, but he preferred to remain faithful to the idea that small decisions, made with empathy, had the power to generate impact far beyond what anyone could imagine. This mindset accompanied him on every trip, with every passenger, from the hurried executive needing to get to a meeting to the elderly woman who just wanted to talk to ease her loneliness. He listened, advised when he could, offered silence when necessary, and above all, treated each person with dignity. It was common for other drivers to comment on how he accepted rides that many would reject because they weren't profitable. He, however, said that you never know what might be behind a call. Perhaps it was just another passenger, but it could also be an opportunity to make a difference in someone's life. This worldview, simple yet profound, set him apart. And precisely because of this way of life, he seemed always ready for situations where others might hesitate. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject because it is at this point in the story that destiny begins to prepare a journey that would change everything, putting this genuine willingness to help to the test and showing the behind the scenes of a transformation that only time could reveal. Comment there. That makes sense to me. The city streets became almost an extension of that taxi driver's life. Every curve, every traffic light, every bus stop was part of a map he knew like a sore thumb. His car, even though simple, was the space where stories met, where anonymous lives crossed paths for a few minutes. He would start early, when the sun was barely peeking over the horizon, and only finish his journey late at night, often unsure if the day's pay would be enough to cover all expenses. Still, he never failed to greet customers with a smile, because he understood that more than just driving, he was there to serve. The passengers were of all kinds: hurried workers, sleepy students, lost tourists, mothers carrying children. Each one had a different urgency in their eyes, and he recognized these needs with rare sensitivity. In every good morning or good night, there was something genuine, as if he wanted to offer more than just a ride. The taxi driver saw his profession as a way to be present in the world, to touch lives in subtle ways, even if most of them never remembered his name. And there were also the invisible hardships, the ones almost no one imagines when they get into a car and ask for a ride. The gas tank that seemed to empty faster than their wallets inflated, the worn tires that needed replacing, the maintenance that was always postponed because other bills came first. Life was a series of difficult choices where there was almost never room for luxuries. But despite this, he carried within him a mindset of resilience, a hidden truth that was reflected in the way he approached each day. He believed that every challenge brought with it an opportunity for growth, even if it was simply learning to be patient in the face of storms. It wasn't uncommon for more impatient passengers to treat him with indifference, as if his role were invisible. Yet he didn't let these moments rob him of his humanity. He continued to offer his kindness because he knew that somehow each gesture had a greater impact than it seemed. This daily journey was made up of small, silent battles, keeping the car clean, enduring long hours in chaotic traffic, facing the loneliness of an empty back seat. But within him, there was always a spark of purpose, the certainty that he was fulfilling a role that, however small, had value. What kept his mind steady was not just the need to survive, but the conviction that living with dignity was a choice. There were days when exhaustion weighed more heavily, when the bills piling up at home seemed greater than his strength, but all it took was a sincere smile from a passenger, a word of gratitude to rekindle his faith. It was in these small, invisible rewards that he found the strength to carry on. And perhaps it was precisely this simple yet powerful mindset that made him special. The taxi driver didn't accumulate wealth, but he accumulated stories, moments that shaped his perception of life. He understood that each person who entered his car carried with them invisible baggage, a universe of feelings, pain, and hopes. And in a way, it was as if each ride was an opportunity to connect with others, to remember that despite their differences, everyone is on the same road, trying to reach a destination. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because it is precisely in the contrast between this humble routine and the unexpected that the power of transformation lies. This taxi driver's life, marked by hardships and small gestures, was about to intersect with something that would change his destiny in ways he could never have imagined. And it is at this point that the story gains momentum, showing how simple decisions can open doors to revelations no one could have foreseen. Comment there. I'm on this journey too. The early morning was shrouded in that dense silence only big cities know when the rain falls relentlessly. The streets reflected the streetlights like broken mirrors, and the taxi driver, tired after a long day of work, was already thinking about calling it a day. The steering wheel felt heavier, and his eyes burned with sleep. But amid the monotony of that humid night, something broke the routine. A woman, soaked and panting, appeared at the edge of the sidewalk, desperately waving for him to stop. Her gesture wasn't that of someone simply needing a ride, but of someone carrying an urgent burden, a need that couldn't wait. As she got into the car, the smell of rain mixed with sweat from the strain filled the air. Her voice, trembling, almost breathless, revealed what was happening. She was in labor. And to heighten the drama of the situation, she confessed that she had no money to pay the fare. It was an immediate reality check, a dilemma that anyone else might have used as an excuse to refuse. But the taxi driver didn't hesitate for a second. Inside him, something stronger than financial logic spoke louder. The life that was about to be born was worth more than any currency. The engine roared amid the heavy rain, and the car's wheels cut through the puddles as if their haste could defy time itself. The taxi driver knew he was facing a journey unlike any other. It wasn't just a matter of getting a passenger from one point to another, but of becoming part of a unique and decisive moment. It was as if, by chance, or fate, he had been placed on this path to experience this unexpected revelation. With each passing minute, the tension grew. The woman held tightly to the back of the front seat, breathing deeply, tears of pain and fear mingling with the rainwater streaming down her face. The taxi driver, unfazed, tried to convey calm, telling her everything would be fine, that he would arrive on time. His own rapid breathing betrayed the pressure he felt, but his mind was focused on one goal: getting his mother safely to the hospital. At that moment, the car ceased to be just a means of transportation. It became a refuge, a space where courage, hope, and faith converged. The honking of other vehicles seemed distant, and red traffic lights became barriers to be overcome cautiously but without delay. It was as if time had gained a new measure, and every lost second could completely change the course of that story. And deep down, there was something almost symbolic about that scene. A simple taxi driver, accustomed to dealing with the silent struggles of everyday life, now became the link between the fragility of life about to arrive and the urgency of the mother struggling to bear the pain. It was a powerful contrast, the simplicity of an ordinary man faced with the grandeur of the miracle of life. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what seemed like just an impulsive gesture of compassion was actually planting a seed of transformation, one of those that take years to blossom, but that, when revealed, show the unimaginable impact of choices made in silence, without witnesses, guided only by the power of empathy. Right there. This makes sense to me. At that moment, time seemed to slow down. The sound of rain hitting the car windows, the distant honking of horns in the early morning, and the woman's heavy breathing in the back seat created an almost cinematic scene. The taxi driver, his hands firmly on the steering wheel, felt his heart race, not because of the ride itself, but because of the decision forming within him. In his mind, two voices clashed. One reminded him of the overdue rent, the bills piling up on the kitchen table, and the responsibility of putting food on the table for his family. The other spoke softer but with undeniable force, the voice of compassion, reminding him that before him was not just a passenger, but a life about to be born, a mother in despair. It was a true dilemma, the kind that reveals the essence of who we are when our masks fall and there's no time for calculations. He knew that the fare, if charged, could be the difference between paying a utility bill or postponing it once again. But he also knew that if he focused only on the money, he could carry the burden of having ignored a greater human calling. The woman's gaze, simultaneously distressed and confident, seemed to beg for more than transportation. It was as if she were pleading, "Choose humanity over profit." It's curious how, in moments like these, seemingly small decisions become eternal marks on someone's life. The taxi driver felt this. He didn't have much, but he had something no amount of money could buy: the ability to decide what his mark on the world would be. And this choice, though it involved sacrifice, also carried the possibility of transformation. Because deep down, we all know there's a hidden truth in life. What we give without expecting anything in return often comes back in ways we could never have predicted. With a deep sigh, he made his decision. Instead of thinking about the marks he wouldn't receive at the end of the race, he focused on what really mattered. He sped through the rain-soaked streets, dodging puddles and crossing nearly deserted traffic lights, muttering under his breath, "Hold on tight, everything will be fine." At that moment, his mind stopped weighing pros and cons. Empathy had won out. He no longer saw a client. He saw a mission. The taxi became more than a vehicle. It became shelter, hope, almost a link between the life he was struggling to achieve and the urgency of not letting this chance slip away. And as he drove, he was surprised by the calm that welled up within. His heart still beat fast, but there was peace in knowing he had chosen the path of kindness. And when a person acts like this, something changes, not only in the recipient, but especially in the giver. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because this dilemma isn't just the taxi drivers that early morning. How many times have you found yourself faced with choices where logic dictated one thing, but conscience demanded another? Decisions that don't make the headlines, but that silently shape our destiny. That's where the real impact lies. In the invisible choices, behind the scenes of everyday life, when no one applauds and no one judges, only our own conscience observes. And as the car rolled through the silent city, every drop of rain on the windshield seemed to accompany this internal movement. It was as if the universe witnessed this decision to place compassion above immediate necessity. It might have been just another night on the job for any other driver, but for him, it was becoming a journey that would mark him forever. Comment there? That makes sense to me. At that moment, time seemed to slow down. The sound of rain hitting the car windows, the distant honking of horns in the early morning, and the woman's heavy breathing in the back seat created an almost cinematic scene. The taxi driver, his hands firmly on the steering wheel, felt his heart race, not because of the ride itself, but because of the decision forming within him. In his mind, two voices clashed. One reminded him of the overdue rent, the bills piling up on the kitchen table, and the responsibility of putting food on the table for his family. The other spoke softer, but with undeniable force. The voice of compassion, reminding him that before him was not just a passenger, but a life about to be born, a mother in despair. It was a true dilemma, the kind that reveals the essence of who we are when our masks fall and there's no time for calculations. He knew that the fare, if charged, could be the difference between paying a utility bill or postponing it once again. But he also knew that if he focused only on the money, he could carry the burden of having ignored a greater human calling. The woman's gaze, simultaneously distressed and confident, seemed to beg for more than transportation. It was as if she were pleading, "Choose humanity over profit." It's curious how, in moments like these, seemingly small decisions become eternal marks on someone's life. The taxi driver felt this. He didn't have much, but he had something no amount of money could buy, the ability to decide what his mark on the world would be. And this choice, though it involved sacrifice, also carried the possibility of transformation. Because deep down, we all know there's a hidden truth in life. What we give without expecting anything in return often comes back in ways we could never have predicted. With a deep sigh, he made his decision. Instead of thinking about the marks he wouldn't receive at the end of the race, he focused on what really mattered. He sped through the rain-soaked streets, dodging puddles and crossing nearly deserted traffic lights, muttering under his breath, "Hold on tight, everything will be fine." At that moment, his mind stopped weighing pros and cons. Empathy had won out. He no longer saw a client, he saw a mission. The taxi became more than a vehicle. It became shelter, hope, almost a link between the life he was struggling to achieve and the urgency of not letting this chance slip away. And as he drove, he was surprised by the calm that welled up within. His heart still beat fast, but there was peace in knowing he had chosen the path of kindness. And when a person acts like this, something changes not only in the recipient, but especially in the giver. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic because this dilemma isn't just the taxi drivers that early morning. How many times have you found yourself faced with choices where logic dictated one thing, but conscience demanded another, decisions that don't make the headlines, but that silently shape our destiny? That's where the real impact lies, in the invisible choices, behind the scenes of everyday life, when no one applauds and no one judges, only our own conscience observes. And as the car rolled through the silent city, every drop of rain on the windshield seemed to accompany this internal movement. It was as if the universe witnessed this decision to place compassion above immediate necessity. It might have been just another night on the job for any other driver, but for him, it was becoming a journey that would mark him forever. Comment there. That makes sense to me. The car moved forward, as if driven not only by the power of the engine, but also by the urgency in the air. The taxi driver knew every second could matter, and every time the traffic light turned red, his heart pounded as if racing against his own destiny. The woman in the back seat groaned in pain, her hands gripping the front seat, trying to find some support as her breathing quickened, heavy, almost like a clock counting down to something inevitable. Outside, the honking horns, the puddles, and the headlights reflected on the asphalt created a scene of chaos, as if the whole world were conspiring to delay their arrival at the hospital. And yet, amidst it all, there was an invisible force driving this race against time: compassion. Each kilometer traveled seemed longer than the last. The taxi driver breathed deeply, trying to remain calm, but inside he felt the tension growing. He knew that in situations like this, it wasn't just about driving fast, but about having the right mindset to avoid losing himself in nervousness. His concentration was total, as if each decision, turning left or right, accelerating or slowing down, could be the difference between a life beginning and a tragedy looming. This was the hidden truth of those who experience these behind-the-scenes experiences of real life. It's not just a physical race, it's an emotional journey where revelations appear in the details, in the impact of every small choice. The woman was crying, but there was also a gleam in her eyes, a mixture of fear and hope. Perhaps she wondered if she would have time. Perhaps she thought about how different everything might have been if she hadn't found that taxi driver willing to stop and help her without charging anything. With each gasp, the scene became more intense, more symbolic. It was as if fate were testing them both. On one side, the desperate need of someone. On the other, the generosity of a man who, despite his own hardships, had decided to put another person's life above any financial calculation. As the taxi drove on, there was a dense silence that mingled with the sound of the rain. The driver didn't say much, but deep down he reflected on his own life. How many times had he faced similar dilemmas? How many times have you had to choose between what was most advantageous for you and what was fairest for others? There, in that early morning, he realized that every gesture, every action can carry an invisible transformation which often only reveals itself in the future. This was the greater truth. It wasn't just about taking a passenger to the hospital, but also about leading himself on a journey of revelations, about empathy, decision-making, and human impact. Amidst the tension, the traffic seemed to mock him, with its slow-moving cars, endless traffic lights, and inattentive drivers. But there was something driving him, the conviction that he could not fail, that woman needed him. And in moments like these, it's as if life holds a mirror before us, reflecting who we truly are when no one else can intervene. The taxi driver wasn't just a humble worker that night, but a protagonist in a story that, years later, would still be remembered. He didn't know it yet, but every kilometer he traveled was building a legacy, a memory that would transcend the simple act of driving. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic because behind this race against time lies a deeper reflection on the impact of our decisions. Sometimes, what seems like a simple gesture becomes something that shapes entire destinies. And that's the beauty of human choices. We never know where they might take us. Have you ever stopped to think about how a small gesture can forever resonate in someone's life? Comment below. That makes sense to me. The taxi driver stood for a few moments at the hospital door, his heart still racing and his breath coming in short gasps. It was as if time had finally slowed down after the race against the clock. He watched as the nurses pushed the stretcher, the woman now entrusted to medical care, and a sense of relief washed over him. The sound of the wheels sliding across the cold hospital floor contrasted with the still vivid echo of the tension that had gripped the taxi minutes before. And when he heard the loud cry of a newborn baby coming from inside the waiting room, a sincere smile formed on his face. That cry wasn't just a sign of life. It was the sound of victory over fear and time. The taxi driver, who had so often transported anonymous passengers, this time had driven much more than a ride. He had carried an entire hope in his invisible arms of courage. As the baby was born healthy, he felt as if he had witnessed a small miracle, and perhaps deep down he knew that that simple gesture, opening the taxi door without thinking about money, had placed him at a turning point in his own journey. Often, behind the scenes in life, we fail to realize that seemingly small choices are actually decisions that carry a gigantic impact. He wasn't just helping a desperate passenger, but writing a story that would remain etched in his memory forever. This moment also brought to light a hidden truth. No matter how much we live surrounded by hardships, bills to pay, and heavy responsibilities, there is a space within each of us reserved for compassion. And it is precisely when we choose to let this space guide our actions that we reveal the noblest part of our humanity. The taxi driver, with all his simplicity, demonstrated a mindset often lacking in those with far greater resources, the ability to act for others without expecting anything in return. The birth of that baby seemed to symbolize more than the arrival of a new life. It was also a sign of transformation. With each beat of that child's heart, it was as if the universe was telling him that his decision had been worth it, that he had chosen the right path. And in that moment, all the effort of running, all the tension of the traffic, and even the sacrifice of a much-needed sum from his income seemed small compared to the scene he was witnessing. He knew he had made a difference, even if no one outside recognized the weight of his gesture. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because moments like these remind us of something powerful. When we choose to act with kindness, we not only change the fate of those we receive, but we also rewrite our own story. Each generous decision leaves an invisible mark, a kind of emotional legacy that carries echoes of hope beyond the immediate moment. The taxi driver, watching that healthy baby be born, may not have fully grasped how this action would impact him in the future, but he felt the peace in his heart of knowing he did the right thing. And it's at this point that I want to invite you to reflect with me. How many times have you made a seemingly small decision that ended up changing everything? How many times have you given up something out of compassion and later realized that choice had a much greater impact than you imagined? Life has this curious way of revealing behind the scenes the consequences of our actions. Perhaps you've experienced something similar, and if this thought touches your heart now, comment, "That resonates with me." Because when we share these experiences, we help each other see that even amidst daily struggles, kindness always leaves a trail worth following. He stood for a few seconds beside the stretcher, unsure whether to say something or simply let the healthcare professionals take over. His heart was still pounding, and amidst the whirlwind of sounds, the baby's cries, the doctor's rapid instructions, the creaking of instruments on the floor, there was a moment when the world seemed to go silent. The woman, exhausted but with an indescribable gleam in her eyes, extended her hand toward the taxi driver. It was a simple, almost fragile gesture, but charged with an intensity that words could never fully convey. He approached, took her hand, and felt her. Cold, trembling skin, mixed with the sweat of pain and the relief of new life. And it was in that brief contact that something profound happened. She couldn't say much, perhaps just a whispered "thank you" through tears. But her eyes spoke volumes. They were eyes that conveyed gratitude, reverence, and a silent recognition that this man, unknowingly, had become a fundamental part of the most defining chapter of her life. The taxi driver, for his part, didn't know how to react. He wasn't seeking applause or expecting recognition. His decision had been born of an almost instinctive compassion, of a hidden truth that screamed within him, telling him this is the right thing to do. The scene was etched in his memory with the same intensity as a revelation. For him, that moment of connection was living proof that no matter how hard the journey, there were still reasons to justify every effort, every sleepless night, and every difficult choice made along the way. He said goodbye with a shy smile, the kind of smile born from a mix of exhaustion and peace. He walked slowly through the hospital corridors, the feeling almost surreal. There was nothing left to hold him there. In his mind, he thought that this story ended right there, that he would probably never see that woman or the child who had just been born again. But without realizing it, he carried with him much more than memories. He carried the certainty that he had touched a life irreversibly, and that this impact, though invisible, would continue to resonate. It was as if I had planted a seed of kindness in the soil of destiny, not knowing when or if it would bloom again. And this made him reflect on how seemingly small decisions can become true turning points. How often, in the heat of a dilemma, do we think only of what we need at that moment, forgetting the power our actions have to shape entire futures? Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because that's precisely where the story's real. Impact lies behind the scenes, in encounters that seem fleeting but carry revelations capable of changing destinies. That tearful handshake was more than a simple thank you. It was the embodiment of a truth the taxi driver didn't yet fully understand, but one that would silently accompany him, ready to resurface years later. And perhaps you've experienced something similar, when a simple gesture received a response that touched your soul. If this resonates with you, comment below. I'm on this journey too, because in the end we all walk roads where compassion can become the beacon of light that transforms the entire journey. Days turned into months, months into years, and the taxi driver's life continued with its simple yet challenging cadence. He still woke early every morning, taking a deep breath before taking the wheel of his aging car, and hit the streets with the same spirit of perseverance. Between trips, the passengers changed, stories intertwined, but deep inside him, the memory of that rainy night remained tucked away in a special corner of his mind, almost like a secret he shared with no one. It was a memory that sometimes surfaced in the form of a fleeting image. The baby's cry, the grateful woman's trembling hand, the sense of duty accomplished. But soon he tucked it away again, convinced that it had been just an isolated episode in his journey. Life, however, was relentless. Bills piled up, his car needed repairs, and he often found himself in dilemmas that required tough choices. Still, he never lost his mindset of doing the right thing, even when it seemed no one was watching. This was his hidden truth, the silent conviction that kept him steadfast. The idea that dignity lies in small decisions, in choices that may not yield immediate returns, but shape the character of those who make them. The impact of that night, though dormant, still vibrated in his way of seeing the world. He continued offering rides to elderly people who didn't have enough money, helping mothers with small children load bags into the trunk without expecting anything in return, and even extending his shift when he saw someone needed to get home safely late at night. It was as if that experience had opened within him an inexhaustible source of compassion, which manifested itself behind the scenes of his daily routine. But even so, there were moments when the harsh reality hit harder. The mechanic shop that charged a lot for repairs, the rent that seemed increasingly difficult to pay, the loneliness that sometimes accompanied him in the silent early mornings. The curious thing is that, despite all this, he never regretted the choice he made that night. On the contrary, on the most difficult days, it was precisely this memory that gave him the strength to believe that it was still worthwhile to act with kindness, even without expecting anything in return. It was as if, deep down, he knew that life has mysterious ways of giving back what you give to the world, although you never know when or how. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic because this silent waiting, these years of apparent oblivion, reveal a powerful truth. Seeds of goodness don't always blossom immediately. Sometimes they remain hidden underground for a long time until suddenly they sprout in a way that completely surprises. And it is precisely in this interval of silence that our faith, our patience, and our mindset are tested. The taxi driver continued to believe in his journey, unaware that destiny was already preparing a revelation for him. And maybe you've experienced something like this yourself, when you did something good and wondered if it was really worth it. But life always finds a way to answer. Comment, that makes sense to me, because this reflection is a journey we've all traveled in some way. It was an ordinary night, like so many others, when the taxi driver arrived home exhausted, his shoulders heavy and his hands still scarred by the steering wheel. He had spent the day battling traffic, listening to fleeting stories of passengers who came and went like pieces of a constantly shifting set. He was used to arriving, dropping his keys on the table, preparing a simple dinner, and collapsing into his chair, trying to find some solace in the silence of his own home. But that night, something different happened. As he prepared to shut out the world and retire, an unexpected sound interrupted his routine. A firm knock on your door. At first, he thought it was just a neighbor, perhaps asking for help with something trivial or even a mistake. The neighborhood was quiet. Rarely did anyone come looking for him. But there was something about that knocking that sounded different, as if it carried a greater weight, almost a contained urgency. His heart raced slightly, and for a moment, his mind raced with possibilities. Was it a problem? Bad news? Or perhaps a stroke of fate bringing something he couldn't have foreseen? With slow steps, he approached the door. The silence of the night seemed to amplify every sound. The creak of the wooden floor, the breeze blowing through the cracks in the window, his own breathing becoming heavier. When he finally reached for the doorknob, he felt a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty. This wasn't just an ordinary visit. He sensed it without knowing how to explain it. There was a different energy in the air, as if that simple knock were a turning point in his journey. When he opened the door, the scene before him was nothing like he'd imagined. A person stood there, their eyes fixed on him in a way that seemed to span the years. The face, even more mature, carried a memory dormant in the taxi driver's mind. It was as if time had turned only to bring back a seemingly forgotten encounter. In that instant, memories came flooding back. The rain, the despair, the crying of a baby, the sense of urgency inside the car that distant dawn. It didn't take long for him to understand that life had just brought back an unfinished story. The visitor smiled, but it wasn't just any smile. It was a smile laden with meaning, a silent gesture that said, "I'm back." The taxi driver stood frozen for a few seconds, as if destiny itself had materialized before him. His journey, which seemed marked only by sacrifices and ordinary days, now revealed a hidden truth. No act of kindness is wasted, even when time insists on making us believe it was merely a forgotten detail. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this simple scene, this knock on the door after so many years, shows how life holds events behind the scenes that only reveal themselves when we're ready to understand them. It's in this kind of revelation that we understand the impact of seemingly small decisions, those made without any thought of return, but which carry within them the power to transform entire destinies. And perhaps you, listening to this story, have also felt that something you did in the past could still come back to you in some way. Life always finds a way to close cycles. Write in the comments, "I'm on this journey too," because this reflection isn't just about him, it's about all of us. When the taxi driver opened the door and saw the figure standing before him, time seemed to stand still. It took his tired eyes a few seconds to believe what they were seeing, but soon the memory ran like a vivid film through his mind. It was her, the woman from the rainy dawn, the one he had taken to the hospital free of charge in a gesture of pure compassion. Only now she wasn't alone. Beside her, a grown child, with eyes bright with curiosity and an energy that radiated life, stood there, holding her hand firmly. The impact of the moment was overwhelming. The taxi driver felt his heart race, not only from the immediate recognition, but from the silent realization that before him was the living consequence of a decision made years ago. That child, now, smiling shyly, was the baby he'd helped bring into the world by offering a ride when no one else was around. It was as if the past had returned in the form of gratitude, embodied in that unexpected reunion. The woman, her eyes brimming with tears, said nothing for a few seconds. She simply let the silence speak, a silence charged with emotion, with remembrance, with recognition. The taxi driver, for his part, felt a mixture of pride and humility. Pride in having been part of something so significant, and humility in realizing that even without expecting anything in return, life had found a way to repay that gesture. It was a reality check and at the same time, a revelation about the enormity of the choices we make without thinking of rewards. The child looked at him with a kind of innocent admiration, as if he knew, even without fully understanding, that this simple man had been an essential part of his story. This look awakened a sense of purpose in the taxi driver. His routine, so often marked by hardship, suddenly took on new meaning. This wasn't just a visit, it was a powerful reminder that gestures of humanity are never lost, even when they seem to disappear in the hustle and bustle of everyday life. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic because this unexpected reunion shows us the real impact of decisions made in the silence of conscience. When the taxi driver chose to act with compassion, he not only helped a desperate woman, he participated in an invisible transformation, a journey that would only be revealed years later. This is the backstage we often fail to see in life. While we think our actions dissolve in time, they are actually building stories that may one day return to remind us of who we truly are. That moment wasn't just moving, it was also a hidden truth being revealed. Life is made of these surprising twists and turns that show us that nothing is ever in vain. He had gone about his daily life, believing that episode was Just another forgotten good deed. But now he had before him concrete proof that everything we do with kindness echoes somewhere. Perhaps you've experienced something like this, on a smaller or larger scale. A reunion, a memory, someone who came back to say thank you in an unexpected way. And it's precisely at this point that the taxi driver's story connects with all of us. It teaches us that even the simplest choices carry an invisible, life-changing impact. Comment there. That makes sense to me, because this kind of revelation is not just about them, it's about how life responds to every gesture we choose to offer. When the first words finally left the woman's mouth, the atmosphere became even more charged with emotion. With a choked voice, she told the taxi driver that she had never forgotten that night. Every detail was still etched in her memory. The seemingly endless rain, the desperation of experiencing contractions with no one to help, and, above all, the outstretched hand of a simple man who thought neither of money nor time, only of saving 2 lives. The taxi driver listened in silence, absorbing each word as if they were revelations of a hidden chapter of his own existence. She continued, revealing something even deeper. She said that since her son's birth, she had carried with her the promise to never let that attitude be erased by routine or oblivion. She promised herself that her boy would grow up hearing the story of how a stranger, expecting nothing in return, became the unsung hero who changed their fates. At every birthday, at every important childhood moment, this story was told as a life lesson, a reminder that gratitude is not just a feeling, but a mindset that shapes who we are. The taxi driver, with suppressed tears, began to realize the enormity of it all. He hadn't just transported a passenger that night, he'd transported a legacy. His gesture had become a kind of moral legacy that was now being passed down from generation to generation. The boy smiling beside his mother wasn't just a healthy child, he was also a living symbol of how decisions made in seconds can echo for decades. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic because what this woman did was reveal a hidden truth we often overlook, that our actions, no matter how small they seem, can become seeds of eternal impact. By teaching her son about gratitude, she was multiplying the value of the gesture, creating a cycle of kindness that could expand far beyond what the taxi driver imagined. It was as if that rainy night had become the starting point of a silent journey of transformation, which was now returning to him in the form of recognition. This revelation not only moved the taxi driver, but also made him reflect on the mindset that is so often stifled by everyday worries. How often do we think that helping someone is irrelevant because we believe the world forgets too quickly? And yet, here was living proof that nothing is lost. Life has its own backstory, and it is in these backstories that the invisible threads of our choices intertwine to form a picture much larger than we can currently see. The boy, still unable to fully grasp the weight of his mother's words, looked at the taxi driver as if he were facing an almost mythical figure. To him, that man wasn't just a taxi driver. He was responsible for the fact that he was alive, able to play, run, dream, and imagine the future. That look made the taxi driver realize that his existence, however modest, had left an indelible mark on another life. And that, more than any payment, was the true reward. The reunion then ceased to be just an unexpected visit. It became a moving revelation about the power of gratitude, about how compassionate decisions create ripples that span time and return in moments we least expect. The taxi driver understood that that day would forever change the way he viewed his work, his routine, and even the value of his own life. Comment: I'm on this journey too, because this story shows us that every act of kindness can become the beginning of something much bigger than we imagine. Just when it seemed the night had already delivered all its surprises, The woman, with teary eyes and a firm voice, revealed that her visit wasn't just to say thank you. She was carrying with her something that, in her view, was the most fitting way to repay the gesture that had forever marked her life. The taxi driver, still stunned, hardly knew how to react. It was as if life was about to reveal yet another of its hidden truths, the kind that emerge without warning and completely transform the course of history. She said that over the years, she had strived to build a better life, always remembering the night when everything could have gone wrong, but didn't because someone decided to act with compassion. And it was precisely this feeling that motivated her to return more than just words of gratitude to the taxi driver. There was a proposal, an unexpected opportunity, something that could change his trajectory and give new meaning to all the difficulties he had been silently facing. The man, accustomed to living on a shoestring, felt a mixture of fear and hope. How many times had he thought his days would all pass the same, in a routine with no room for major upheavals? And yet there she was, offering not just a memory, but a tangible gift. It could have been financial support to alleviate the debts suffocating him, a job, opportunity with better conditions, or even a symbolic gesture, yet one packed with impact, demonstrating how life has its own twists and turns and knows how to surprise us when we least expect it. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because this moment wasn't just about material help. It was, above all, a powerful message about mindset and transformation. What lay before him wasn't just a chance to improve his practical life, but an invitation to see that his choices and kindness hadn't gone unnoticed. It was living proof that generous decisions can create invisible ripples that return multiplied. He, who had so often doubted the value of his own actions, was now faced with confirmation that every gesture counts. The taxi driver's heart was beating faster, but it wasn't the same tense rhythm as that rainy night he'd driven his wife to the hospital. It was a mixture of emotion, disbelief, and relief. The proposal he'd heard wasn't just about what he'd receive, but about the revelation that his life, so marked by challenges, was about to take on new meaning. And this awareness opened space for even deeper reflections on the impact each human being can have on the journey of another. He remembered all the times he'd questioned whether it was worth acting kindly in a world that so often seems indifferent. Now he had the answer in person, a reminder that the hidden truth of life is that nothing is wasted when done with the heart. The unexpected gift wasn't just an immediate benefit. It was also a mirror that showed the taxi driver who he truly was, someone capable of inspiring transformation even without seeking recognition. The atmosphere was charged with emotion, but also with a sense of destiny fulfilled. The woman's gaze showed not only gratitude, but also pride in being able to give back. And at the same time, the taxi driver's face showed the expression of someone who finally understood that the behind-the-scenes aspects of his journey were connected to something much greater than he had imagined. Comment there. This makes sense to me, because this scene reminds us that life always finds unexpected ways to return the good we offer. Do you know what this story teaches us almost inevitably? That life has its own memory, silent and precise. What we sincerely offer to others is not lost in time, nor does it disappear into oblivion. On the contrary, it remains stored in the invisible shadows of existence, waiting for the right moment to return, often unexpectedly and transformatively. The taxi driver could never have imagined that the decision to part with a few bucks on a rainy morning would, years later, result in such a profound change in his life. This is living proof that a simple act of kindness can span the years and return to transform lives, not only of those who receive it, but also of those who give it. And it's at this point that I want you to reflect with me. How many times have you witnessed, or even experienced, situations where a small action had a gigantic impact? Perhaps a gesture that seemed insignificant, but for someone was the thread of hope that kept them going. These revelations remind us that, amid daily pressures, difficult decisions, and even our own limitations, true wealth lies in cultivating a mindset of compassion and generosity. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because the great transformation doesn't happen only when the reward arrives, but the moment we choose to act without expecting anything in return. The taxi driver didn't open the car door thinking of a reward. He acted out of empathy, out of the urgency to save a life. This is the hidden secret so many people overlook. Genuine kindness doesn't calculate, doesn't negotiate, doesn't expect recognition. And precisely for this reason, it has the power to multiply and surprise. This story invites us to reevaluate our own decisions. Are we choosing to look beyond appearances? Can we see the impact our actions can have on someone else's journey? Often, we get so caught up in our own struggles that we forget that a gesture of humanity can illuminate not only someone else's path, but our own as well. And I want to leave you with a very special invitation. Comment below if you've ever experienced or witnessed an act of kindness you've never forgotten. Share your experience in the comments, because your story could be the inspiration someone needs today. If this message resonated with you, please like it, as this will help bring this kind of reflection to even more people. And if you want to continue receiving inspiring stories that warm the heart and demonstrate the power of empathy, subscribe to the channel and join this community. There's always something valuable waiting for you. There's a video here that complements this topic and will further change your outlook on life. Click and stay with me there, because our journey of discovery and revelation is just beginning. If you've made it this far, it's because this story spoke to you in some way. And that's exactly why I want to invite you to continue walking with me. If this content resonated with you, touched your heart, or sparked an important reflection, subscribe to the channel and don't miss the next stories that can transform your outlook on life. Also, leave a like, because that's what shows we're connected on this same journey of humanity and inspiration. And I'm going to ask you something special. Comment below with the phrase, "I'm with you until the end," just so I know who really followed this message down to the last detail. It'll be incredible to see who was with me from the beginning to the end of this narrative. And before you go, you don't have to stop here. There's a video on the side that complements this topic and can provide even more clarity and inspiration. Click and stay with me there, because our conversation is just beginning.